I'm Mark Winston. I'm a senior fellow at the Center for Dialogue here at SFU, and I'll be the great pleasure of facilitating the session today. We're just about at 100 people, and many people are still coming in. A nice mix of students and staff, faculty, alumni, to begin continuing our conversations about the SFU Medical School, to provide some information, and also to give you a chance to give some feedback and some ideas about things that you're thinking about for the medical school. Just to begin, I wanted to just go through a couple of housekeeping things. If we could see the housekeeping slide. There we go. Yeah, the next one. If you'd like to know who is on the Zoom today, you can click participants and see. For the chat, chat's enabled only to contact the host today. So if you're having any problem and you want to contact the host, you can do that through the chat. And for those of you interested in closed captions who have signed up for that, click on live transcript, and that will take you through the closed captioning setup. And for those of you who are going to be in the breakout groups, and you indicated you wanted closed captioning, we've tried to make sure you're in a breakout that has that service as well. We have quite a packed agenda today. If we could take a quick look at there we go, agenda slide. The short welcome and introduction. In a moment, we'll be introducing a welcoming. And following that, we have a presentation from our President Joy and from Vice President of Academic Wade. And then we're going to have an opportunity to answer some questions that you've pre-submitted. And we're also going to use Slido to have an opportunity for those of you here on the Zoom to also ask some questions. Following that, for those of you who would like to stay, we're going to have some breakout discussions focused on some exciting aspects of SFU's involvement in the medical school. And then we will wrap up with some closing remarks and be done promptly at 4:30. So to begin in a good way, it is my great pleasure to introduce Elder Marie Hooper. He was from the Coquitlam First Nation. She's recently moved on to the nation's reserve, keeping her connected with her culture and keeping her knowledge of the history of the nation and its families, which has been passed down from her ancestors, her grandmother, her aunts, her uncles, cousins, and her mother, who I just found out today is 96 years old, and all who have lived on the reserve lands and territories. She's studied at BC Institute of Technology, Kwantlen Polytech. She's also studied with the Indigenous Environmental Archaeology Program, Ecological Engineering, and is a guardian of the Indigenous lands and territories. And on top of all that activity, she's a mother of 4 and grandmother of 9. So as somebody who has only 3 grandchildren, I can really appreciate how busy you must be with 9 of them. So I'll turn it over to Marie, and looking forward to hearing your words of welcome.
Thank you. OCM, I raise my hands up to Creator Ancestors. Welcome students, visitors, guests, faculty, alumni. To our virtual event, we gather here today in a good way, good heart, compassion, and understanding. My name is Elder Marie Hooper from Coquitlam First Nation. I am ambassador for my nation, and I feel honored to be here today. I'd like to say at this time a land acknowledgement. I respectfully acknowledge Simon Fraser University is on unceded Coast Salish territory, the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Coquitlam, Tsleil-Waututh nations. This time I'd like to share a prayer. Creator, give us the strength to understand and the eyes to see, Teach us to walk the soft earth as relatives to all that live. Hold on to what is good, even if it's a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it's a tree that stands by itself. Our Mother, the Earth, hear us and give us support. Spirit of the East, send us your wisdom. Spirit of the South, may we tread your path of life. Spirit of the West, may we always be ready for the long journey. May we work together, network together, speak together in harmony. May we share hope for a blessed day and days yet to arrive. Let us connect in a good way. Help us to listen compassionately, to speak humbly, to act justly. I'd like to share a few of my personal hopes for the planned SFU Medical School. That we have medical trained administrators, an important role in clinical leadership, a board with trustees, directors that are trained in psychiatry. Our people, Coquitlam people, have recently opened Semiquella Riverview Redfish Healing Center. It has the leading edge for mental health and addictions challenges and research knowledge in BC. Located on the Semiquella lands in Coquitlam, formerly Riverview. The Story Partnership, rich with tradition and culture, significance. We, the Coquitlam Nation, are in partnership with BC Housing and the BC government. I had the honor in presenting a heartfelt speech at our recent opening of the Redfish Healing Center in 2021. Indigenous murals, a donated Coquitlam canoe, paintings are for all to see. Our culture has come alive, naming of the streets in Hunkamalum language. I truly would like to see the ways of the past medical practices, especially the negative side that my ancestors, my family had to endure. To this day of Indigenous people struggles with the past, medical treatment inflicted upon them. I have hope and faith for the future with the new medical school at SFU being one of compassion, caring, meaningful research into healthcare that would benefit not only First Nations, Indigenous people, but all people who work, live, research, and play on our beautiful country lands we call Canada. On our IR2 reserve, we are hoping to open up a state-of-the-art medical building at our business park here in Coquitlam. And once again, with SFU and all the research and healthcare that everybody is being involved in at SFU, gives me hope for the future that some of these students may be able to work at our state-of-the-art medical building at Coquitlam or work up at Riverview, Semiquella. I really, really have faith in this project that's moving forward at a rapid rate. And I sincerely thank everybody for coming together and making medical care for us Indigenous people something to be proud of. Thank you. Hi, Sepka. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Elder Marie. Such words of coming from your own wisdom and experience from deep in your heart. Much appreciated. I'm particularly taken with your hope for hope. I think the medical school is being founded with the hope that we can move forward in healthcare in a good way. And your wise words have really reminded us of that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Joy Johnson, president of Simon Fraser University, Wade Parkhouse, who is the provost and academic vice president, as well as Roger Strasser, who is the interim dean of the growing medical school. We're going to begin with Joy and Wade providing a few introductory remarks and some information about the medical school as we know it. It's very quickly evolving, so they will tell you where we are today. Then they're going to answer a couple of questions that you've pre-submitted, and then we'll move into a Slido session where you can ask some questions as well before we get into the breakout groups. So we'll turn it over to Joy and Wade.
Well, thank you ever so much, Mark, and thanks to your team for helping to facilitate today. I'm really appreciative, and also want to thank Elder Marie for your words and starting us off in a good way. I love the notion of holding on to what is good, and that's something we're trying to do with this medical program, and also the notion of connecting in a good way. So thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge the land we're on. I am here on Burnaby Mountain today, and believe it or not, it's not snowing. The sun is actually shining, and I'm privileged to be on the unceded traditional and continually occupied territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Squamish, and Musqueam First Nations. So we're going to talk about the medical school today and hopefully answer some of the questions. I know people are really interested in the school. And I think Wade and I have been looking forward to having this opportunity to update you on the medical school and also to hear from you about your thoughts and ideas. I'm going to get to the latest news shortly, but before we do, I just want to say there's so many opportunities right now for the medical school and really to make a difference. And I would say particularly in the Fraser Health region. As someone who used to work in the healthcare system, I really do understand the critical role that providing community-centered, patient-centered education that considers the context in which people live, the social, the environmental context, and that also embeds Indigenous perspectives to be very, very key. And I'm really confident that the SFU Medical School will be able to deliver that. In terms of the medical school, what we're trying to do is support the province with their long-term commitment to improve access to primary care. If you talk to anyone, including my mother and aunts and uncles, et cetera, in this province, you know that access to primary care is an issue and something that we all need to be thinking about and working on. And the medical school is going to educate the next generation of physicians, primarily in the Fraser Health region. And these physicians are going to help us meet the growing need for healthcare for diverse populations, particularly those who are underserved, and for Indigenous peoples. So we are establishing working groups right now of senior SFU leaders, external medical education experts, and partners to shape options for curriculum, space, workforce, and research. And over the next 4 months, Roger Strasser, our interim dean, always says we're not at the beginning, we're getting close to the beginning. But over the next 4 months, we're going to be really focused on developing a strong business case so that we can begin. The business case is going to help us secure the province's investment and really help to initiate our relationship with the accreditation body, CACMS. So work right now is focused on completing the business case. As I said, working groups have been established with internal and external medical experts. We've done a lot of significant internal consultation already, and I think some of you that I see in the Zoom room today were at previous town halls. But we really want to hear from our communities, both internal and external, as we engage in this work. We think it can help shape the medical program. We do believe that we want to develop a medical program that really can meet the moment, meet the needs of British Columbia. And I'm really confident that we've got the team to do so. So I'm going to pass it over to Wade Parkhouse to walk us through some next steps with the medical program.
Great, thank you, Joy. Perhaps we can go on to the next slide. But before I begin, I'll let you know I've only got 5 or 6 slides. I won't be talking for too long, but it is really a pleasure to be speaking to you today. There's a lot of interest in this program, and let me tell you, I hear the excitement across the campus and more widely throughout the province as to the nature of creating a new and different medical school here at Simon Fraser University. But I have to say, first thing I'm going to do is walk through how we got here. I can tell you that both Joy and I were shocked to hear during the last election campaign that Adrian Dix said there will be a medical school at SFU Surrey. We've been asking for one on and off for about 10, 12 years, but we really hadn't been talking to the province about a medical school for at least 3 years. And so learning that we were going to get a medical school was both exciting and also a little scary. Later on in 2021, we were asked to prepare a concept paper on what a medical school at SFU can look like, which we did following a series of engagement. And as Joy said, some of you are here, and I recognize some of you from that time as well. We developed a concept paper, which was prepared the end of April and submitted in May to government and went off to caucus. And I have to say that I didn't hear much for a little while, that we would just be kind of going along as we would normally on the medical program, hear a little bit dribs and drabs. And then in August, we got an expression of interest from government. And since that time, that interest has been building dramatically. We did our initial briefing with Senate in September. And since September, I've been trying to brief Senate at every single meeting on the progress we are making as we move forward towards the business case that needs to be submitted by the end of May this year. And it is a large undertaking to prepare that business case. Next slide, please. This will give you a little bit of an idea as to the complexity, and I'm not going to walk through all this slide for you, but a little bit of complexity associated with putting together both the business plan for government, business case that we need to submit, but also the work that needs to be done to initiate the medical school itself. One of the interesting things about a medical school is that you have to work with 2 different ministries, the Ministry of Post-Secondary and Future Skills, the new name for advanced education ministry for us, but also the Ministry of Health, because the undergraduate medical education program is the responsibility of post-secondary education, whereas the postgraduate one is the responsibility of the Ministry of Health, and the 2 ministries work collectively to develop the medical program. One other thing to keep in mind, this is the first medical program in over 55 years in Western Canada. So it is a large undertaking and a lot of uncertainty as we're moving along. As illustrated here is really just the project governance for getting the business case together for government. You can imagine the complexity here. We have a number of ministry people along with UBC and a number of our health authorities, principally First Nations Health Authority, as well as Fraser Health Authority, on a project board, which is helping prepare the case, which moves on through the planning board for health and medical education. The CEOs and or the VPs of medicine across the health authorities throughout the province are providing guidance to us on what we should be incorporating into a medical school as we are moving forward. We have an internal steering committee to guide our activities and make sure that our decisions are going through both the processes that are external, but internal to the university through our standard processes, through our committees, and on through to Senate. We have a number of leaders that are taking care of the major areas of community engagement, governance, accreditation, the costing and financial analysis. And as Joy indicated, we have a series of working groups that are working very hard to put together the documentation and the ideas to actually figure out what the medical program is going to look like. Next slide, please. So this is going back a little bit, but what I wanted to comment on here is what we heard from our last set of consultation that we did just over a year ago, We heard a number of things from the community that we tried to incorporate into our planning, and it resonates with what we're hearing now. We're looking across the 4 areas that have been the 4 main areas that our working groups are in right now: curriculum, space planning, workforce, and research. And in terms of curriculum, we were asked to consider different types of teaching, and certainly to take into account the importance of team-based learning, patient care, and building those relationships, as well as educating students on cultural safety and humility. In terms of our space, engage early on the building design and construction. You have to realize that the medical program is scheduled to start in 2026. It's 3 years away. It tends to take 5 to 6 years to build a building. So we have to design both interim space and long-term space as to what we're doing. We have to think about the future too, in terms of what medical education is going to be looking like, not just when we open the doors in 2026, but 10 years, 15 years down the road, and make sure that we've got a building that will allow us to capitalize on the changes that are going on in terms of how you deliver curriculum during that time. And we have to prioritize the building in terms of safety and utility. And we've heard that aesthetics should be secondary in here. Excuse me. In terms of our workforce, we have to ensure that we have adequate support for the functions of the school. It is a big undertaking, and a diverse network of people are needed. We have to create a distinct strategy in the hiring of the faculty and the dean. And we hope to be hiring our dean. It's nice to have Roger here as an interim dean, but we need to have a founding dean in place in about a year's time. And something that is unique to medical programming as opposed to programming like engineering, we must meet certain accreditation requirements before we open the doors. And one of those obviously is to have the dean and faculty in place. And we have to engage existing faculty to build our medical community. We have a lot of expertise here at SFU, and we want to make sure that we are integrating the expertise that already exists, the interest that exists across our faculties, the interests of our faculty members into supporting that medical program, but also using it to build a bigger community of medical education here at SFU. Next slide, please. The medical program and what we've heard and where we're going on this is to be built on 5 pillars. One of those pillars is to prepare our graduates to meet the prevention and primary cares of diverse communities. And the program is geared to serve underserved populations. To educate physicians to work in the team-based primary care settings that I mentioned earlier. Commit to reciprocal community partnerships in the development and implementation of that medical program. To embed and equalize Indigenous knowledge and provide community-based learning opportunities, or as we're referring to, place-based learning. Next slide that I wanted to talk about. Please move on. Well, one of the questions I always get asked is, why would we take on the medical program? It's a big undertaking. It's a big draw. It's going to drain a lot of resources, time and energy getting it up and going. Well, that's what we do. We develop new programs. We're also a publicly funded institution. And I'm personally pretty proud of the fact that SFU has been asked to meet the needs of British Columbians in a small way in helping to meet the needs for primary care physicians. So we're working to meet those needs of the British Columbians, to serve the province and to do our part in the community. And a benefit to that is long-term relationships that we will build both with the government and more broadly. As the VPA, I'm certainly interested in the fact that many of our departments and faculties are thinking about new learning pathways, will provide avenues for students to explore different ways that they can enter the medical program itself, but also get more medical information or help education going forward. Clearly, it's going to create opportunities for students to enter the medical program at SFU, and that's very exciting. It's also going to increase our footprint, our infrastructure, and we are in desperate need of renewing our infrastructure. And it's not just about the infrastructure that's going to be present for the new medical school. It's about using the new medical school to leverage the importance of that related to our interdisciplinary life science building that we're hoping to get funded as soon as possible. And it's certainly going to create avenues for us to develop more scholarship and bursary funding for our students. Excuse me. There's no doubt that having a medical school will allow us to grow our faculty complement, which creates more opportunities for us to develop our research across the institution. It also allows for us to think about more cross appointments for existing faculty that are here, and to also develop more practitioner faculty that we can bring in, and the relationships that we can build in both the classroom setting, but also in our research setting with the practitioner faculty that will be joining us, as well as the new faculty positions. We know that medical schools result in an increase in research funding to the institution, and that's good. That really helps. Another thing of real importance to our faculty is the opportunities to create new interdisciplinary research in areas that they wouldn't otherwise have. Having access to the health authorities, having a better and increased role in working with underserved populations is going to increase our reach throughout BC with these health authorities and in terms of our research opportunities. It's going to develop strong partnerships with the health authorities that creates opportunities for internships for our students, but also for practicums and placements through co-op as we develop lots of relationships in the health authorities and think outside of the medical program itself. It builds a relationship with the medical community through the medical professionals that are out there, and is getting many community-based health-oriented organizations to approach SFU as to how they can get engaged in the medical program. One thing that is really clear is that the advancement opportunities associated with medical schools are fantastic, and already we're being approached by many different foundations as to how they can contribute and be involved in the medical program, and thinking about support for students as well as support for research chairs and others. But fundamentally, it will increase the institutional profile of SFU. The next slide is yours, Joy, so I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Wade. Yeah, so just in summary, these are the key takeaways for everyone. Right now, we're focusing on the business case, and it's taking a lot of work, and I really want to thank all of the folks that are involved in this work. As you saw, working groups have been established, and we've got a number of medical experts working with us in this regard. And significant consultation is ongoing. We're really trying to engage our internal and external community. I would say in particular, we're working hard right now with our First Nations, Inuit and Métis communities to make sure that we're listening to them. And I want to just emphasize that this is going to be a different kind of medical school. One that brings benefits both to SFU and to British Columbia. I'm really proud of the vision that's being established. I know there's more work to be done, but I'm excited and really looking forward to future opportunities. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mark, I think, who's going to begin to move us into some questions.
Yes, thank you, Joy and Wade. When people registered for this session, they had an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, and there were a lot of questions. We've tried to group them, and we're going to ask three of them that kind of came up at the top, most frequently asked, and then hopefully there'll be a bit of time for those of you that are on the Zoom to ask questions through Slido. The first question, which Joy will answer, is the timeline. What's the timeline for the medical school?
Well, thanks, Mark. I will say, and Wade is kind of provided a bit of overview. I think everyone gets the fact that this is a big undertaking. And the timeline right now is that we will be admitting our first cohort of students by 2026. But just backing up from there, before we get to that point, we need to get this business case in, and that's going to be completed by May 31st, hopefully 2023. That's our goal right now. And just to be clear, that is going to really provide an overview of our objectives, of our outputs, our budget requirements, and all the implementation considerations. So that's going to go to the government, and then there'll be some back and forth between us about that. as I said, the first cohort of students will be fall 2026, and we need accreditation prior to that. So you can anticipate that early in 2026, late 2025, we'll be starting to seek students to enroll into this program. So it's ambitious, everyone says it is, but I'm really confident we'll get there. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Joy. The second question, and Wade, this is for Wade, and unfortunately, this is probably the hardest one. How are we going to pay for all this?
Yes, I always seem to get the money questions or the hard questions that come about. I think the first question, somewhat hidden in that question, is this going to be a draw on the university resources? And Joy and I have been very adamant in saying if we're not adequately resourced, we're not going to move ahead with the medical program. But let me explain. I already highlighted that funding or the two ministries that are involved with the program are both health and advanced education, or as it's called now, post-secondary and future skills. And both ministries provide the funding for the program. So as with any new program that an institution comes, it comes with bulk funding from the province. So the funding for the undergraduate medical education program will come from advanced ed, as will, and there will be tuition associated. So the funding really for the undergraduate program comes from the block grant and from tuition that we will receive. As for the postgraduate medical education that will be taking place, that will be coming from health. So we get two sources of government funding in terms of operating funds for the program itself. There is another component, which is the infrastructure that's needed to support the program. Well, fundamentally, we would expect the province to provide the infrastructure funding necessary to create facilities for the new medical school. But it's not unusual for the federal government to get involved. There are two other medical schools being developed across the country. One is the Toronto Metropolitan University, and the other one is in Prince Edward Island. That one is associated with Memorial University's medical program. And the federal government has made a commitment financially to the development facilities at the PEI facility. And at TMU in Toronto, the city of Brampton has actually made also a contribution. So you would anticipate that we are going after the sources of provincial, federal, and city funding for the new infrastructure related to the program. One of the other things that I mentioned earlier was advancement opportunities. We know that we need bursaries, particularly given that we want to attract different types of students, diverse student population going into the medical program. And the advancement opportunities that we are seeking right now include both federal dollars in terms of advancement opportunities, but also private donations to support our students and our research as we're going forward. And of course, there are always the hospital and health foundations. So the funding from the program for the program will come from a variety of sources, but principally from government.
Great, thank you, Wade. And our third submitted question, which Roger Strasser, will direct this one to you. Roger, by the way, this is the second medical school he's been involved in founding. He was one of the founding dean for the medical school in Northern Ontario. So has a lot of experience in getting medical schools started in different ways. So Roger, what's going to set SFU apart from other medical schools?
Well, thanks, Mark. That's a great question. Let me start off by saying that graduates of the SFU Medical School will be physicians who have the skills and commitment to provide team-based community-level care where it is most needed in British Columbia, particularly for underserved and underrepresented populations, including Indigenous people. So that's the goal that we set in terms of the outcomes for the SFU Medical School. The work we've been doing in developing curriculum and programming is based on two big ideas. The first is what is called place-based, immersive, community engaged education. So essentially having the students and the residents learning in community and clinical settings that they're expected to serve after they complete their education and training. The second big idea is the facilitator career pathway, or cradle to grave approach. In other words, that we start in those underserved and underrepresented communities and encourage young people, even in elementary school, certainly in high school, to see a future of themselves and a pathway through which they're supported into university, into medical school, with an admissions process that favors applicants from these underserved, underrepresented communities, and for them to be able to undertake much of their clinical learning in their own community or communities like their own community, so that they're preparing to serve their community. And the pathway continues, supporting them as they transition into practice as certified physicians in whichever community level specialty they choose to pursue. And then as they continue in practice, to support them as they develop new interests and new skills in terms of clinical services, in terms of roles in the community and the profession, and also academics. So learning to do research and undertaking research actually in their own community. So that seeing through that, completing their career actually in the same community. So that's the cradle to grave approach. Now, in order to do this successfully, the emphasis on team-based care, the medical education program will be a first for SFU in terms of health professional programs. And so we will be seeking to partner with universities and colleges that have health professional programs. Clearly, University of British Columbia has medicine and a whole range of other health professional programs, as well as colleges and universities. And we are beginning in the Fraser Health region, so looking for those kind of partnerships. And certainly as Canada's engaged university, we're looking to partner with communities and develop relationships and establish collaboration, so that as we move forward to establishing the SFU Medical School, there's genuine co-creation, co-development, co-delivery, co-evaluation of the programs. And that's especially the case in terms of Indigenous peoples, with the principle of reciprocity, cultural safety, and humility. Many of you, I'm sure, are aware and have read the In Plain Sight report. And so this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to, and the wording in the In Plain Sight report is hardwire. Indigenous ways of knowing and being hardwired into all aspects of the SFU Medical School, not just in terms of having Indigenous students and faculty and staff, not just in terms of curriculum, but all aspects of the SFU Medical School. So I think you can see that the SFU Medical School will be truly a new and different medical school for British Columbia.
Great, thank you, Roger. It's certainly exciting. We have a few minutes for some questions to come in through Slido, and I'm going to call on our tech expert, Phil, to walk you through the Slido, and then we'll ask a few questions that way before moving into breakout groups. So Phil, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, thanks for those presentations. As Mark was just saying, we are now going to be accepting questions through Slido. You'll see I just posted into the chat that there's a direct link that you can click on if you want to ask some further questions regarding the medical school planning. And in just a moment here, I'll also share a QR code on the screen so that if you want to scan with either your phone or a tablet, you can access it that way as well. So just give me 1 second here. Okay, so you should now be able to see the QR code on the screen. You can scan that to submit your questions. Also, as questions are coming in, you can upvote them. So we're going to be responding to the questions that we're seeing a lot of people want to have answered. So as you're seeing the questions pop up, either on your computer or on your device, your smartphone or your tablet, please click the little thumbs up icon to upvote those particular questions, and we will address those as they come up. And if you have any issues, please just let me know in the chat and I can help you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Phil. Just going to wait another 30 seconds or so we can see which questions you're most interested in. One of the ones I just saw pop up that I think will be of great interest is how many seats are we going to be offering? So Joy, Wade, Roger, whichever one of you thinks you can best answer that, jump right in. How many seats do you think the medical school will be able to offer?
Why don't I take that one, Joy? It's nice to get an easy one once in a while.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the initial class that we've been instructed to take on will be anywhere from 48 to 64 students. We are aiming for 64 students, and that'll be the size of our program for the first 4 or 5 years. Ultimately, we hope to grow this program to 120 students per year entry.
Super. Here's one thing I'm noticing, by the way, is a lot of the questions coming up we don't have answers to yet. So I'm trying to pick ones that Joy and Wade and Roger can best answer, but keep in mind that these are all great questions that are going to be really deeply examined over the next number of years. Here's one question is about attracting faculty. What will be done to attract clinical faculty and avoid competing with UBC for clinical faculty?
Maybe I'll start and then I'll let Roger also participate in this. You know, I have a great relationship with the president of the University of British Columbia, Deborah Buzzard, and this is something we've been talking about, are ways that our two medical programs can work together. And we certainly recognize that we do need to be mindful of collaborating openly with the University of British Columbia. You will have noticed that on the project planning board, there is representation from the University of British Columbia, and this is a planning board with Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education and Skills Training. So, you know, it's going to take, you know, an open and frank relationship. We're going to, I do believe there's enough resource in the province, and I do think that we are looking for different kinds of placement, and we're certainly getting a lot of enthusiasm from clinical faculty, potential clinical faculty as well. Roger, do you want to say anything else on that?
Yes, well, just to reinforce what you said at the end there, certainly my message is that a successful medical school is a partnership between the university, the health service, and physicians. And we've had well over 100 physicians come forward and express their enthusiasm, their excitement about the SFU Medical School and the opportunity to be part of the SFU Medical School. We are not looking to compete with UBC. We're looking to cooperate and collaborate with UBC. And I've had experience elsewhere with multiple medical schools. There's actually added value having students and residents from different medical schools in the same clinical setting, and arrangements whereby the physicians, other health professionals who are the faculty have faculty status at more than one school without having to, by mutual recognition, without having to go through the whole appointment policies and procedures for each separate school. So we're seeing this as working together ultimately for the benefit of the people of British Columbia.
Super, thanks. I'm going to put a couple of questions together here that I think you guys can answer in part, probably not completely. Will the program be family medicine focused, and will students be able to specialize beyond family medicine into medical, into physician specialties?
Roger, I think you're probably best suited to that one.
Sure. So I use the term community level care because there's certainly a well-recognized need across the province and including the Fraser Health region for family physicians, for expanding primary care, or physician contribution to primary care. But there are needs for other specialists, general specialists who provide community level care or support community level care. I mean, psychiatry, mental health springs to mind immediately, public health, preventive medicine, pediatrics, and so on. So we've been discussing this with the Ministry of Health, and we anticipate having residency programs in the major general specialties. So not only, but certainly family medicine, but not only family medicine, also a range of other general specialties. So we're looking to, consistent with the description of the SFU graduate, the physician that I outlined, community level specialists who will add value to healthcare. Really, the issue is that people in British Columbia are looking to have enhanced high quality healthcare close to home.
Great, thanks. Joy, here's a tough one for you, which I don't know if you can answer, but it's a good question. Where were the medical students going to live? Is SFU planning on doing anything involving housing? Maybe early days for that, but any thoughts on
Yeah,
SFU?
it's a great question. And to be clear, our plan thus far is to have this medical program begin with a focus in the Fraser Health Authority. We are anticipating that the main infrastructure will be in the city of Surrey. And I certainly appreciate, and there are ongoing discussions about housing for students in Surrey. And if you've read and taken a peek at the recent budget, there are new opportunities for developing residence and housing. And certainly this is something we're in conversation with the city of Surrey about as well. So it's something we're mindful of and something that we're going to be paying attention to as we move forward and continue to build out the Surrey campus. We need to be thinking about those types of supports and structures.
Super, thanks. We've got time for one or two more questions. A number have come in about the student body and how will we ensure diversity and representation of the various groups that we're hoping to serve, particularly underrepresented groups. Wade, maybe this is a good one for you to jump in on.
Yeah, why don't I start? And I'm sure Roger can jump in as well. I mean, one of the key elements is in designing this type of program here is to provide pathways both into the medical school, into the school for non-traditional entry points, like other medical schools. So some of the questions will be, will we have an MCAT? At the moment, we're not looking at having an MCAT. We understand those kinds of issues come into play. There's also programs that we can put in place to better prepare students for entry into the medical program that normally would not be taking a look at it. I think what we're going to be doing is trying to make sure that we bring in the diversity that represents the communities that we're going to be serving. And so there's going to be work to ensure that. And that's done through the typical types of things like broad-based admissions as we move forward. Roger, perhaps you can add to that.
Yeah, so I mentioned when I spoke about particularly encouraging applicants who come from underserved and underrepresented communities. And so that will be built into the selection admissions process and supports for those who need extra preparation to be ready to study medicine. So we're certainly looking to be inclusive, and we're looking really, as you said, Wade, to reflect the population distribution of the communities we're serving in each class with the SFU Medical School.
Great. So last question, and this is one that I'm pretty sure you can't answer, but I think you can at least give a framework. I'm asking this because there's a lot of students on the Zoom today, and they've been asking a lot of questions about how can you be a competitive applicant? What are the academic prerequisites going to be to get into medical school? How will SFU actually be different in how it admits students in terms of the requirements? So I know this is a question you can't answer yet. This is something that's going to be deeply studied and a lot of input, but maybe say as much as you can at this point about what we might be looking for in the student applicants. I'll leave it up to you guys to decide who'd like to take this unanswerable question.
Maybe I'll just start by saying, and I'll pass it to you, Roger, based on your experience. I mean, we're talking about something called broad-based admissions. Really thinking not just about marks, not just about, and to be clear, I saw the question. We're not thinking about we're thinking about not using the MCAT because it actually introduces some bias. And we want to make sure that we have, and I would just want to emphasize, a diverse group of students with different kinds of backgrounds. And so we're really thinking anew about that and about prerequisites as well. And if students might not have some of the building blocks and prerequisites, how can we help them get there? How can we put some other things in place for that? Roger, what have I missed?
Well, I think you've covered it well, really. So the MCAT's great for white middle-class Americans, but they're not the students we're looking to attract, so no MCAT. And we're looking for a broad academic background. In terms of the grade point average, we'll be looking at applicants who have a grade above a certain level of grade point average. So certainly taking academics into account, but not only looking at other characteristics, the background, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So looking at where students come from, when they've had choices, what choices they've had. And so really helping to identify as much as we can, applicants who have the best fit for the kind of education program we're offering and the kind of career in medicine that we're looking for the SFU graduates to pursue after they complete their education and training.
Great, thank you. Great questions all, lots of other questions, but I'm afraid we have to move on to the breakout groups. In a couple of minutes, we're going to split you out into breakout groups, and I'll tell you what the questions will be and how that's going to work. When you registered, many of you indicated that you'd only be staying for the information session. And some of you indicated you'd like to stay for the breakouts. Anyone is welcome to stay for the breakouts. If you hadn't planned on it, but would like to stay for the questions, to have some more input, you're more than welcome. But if you're going to skip the breakouts, we'd like to thank you for being here and taking your time and listening and asking some of your great questions. But we would ask that you leave at this point, leave the Zoom call so that we can organize those who stay into the breakout groups. So many thanks for being here. Those of you who would like to stay, please hang on. And those of you who would like to leave, thanks for joining us. And this would be a good time to sign off. In the breakout groups, you'll have 25 minutes. All groups, all the breakout groups will be answering the same questions. The key questions, which we'll post in the chat, are these. First, what unique SFU values, assets, or relationships will set our medical school apart from others? Secondly, what impacts could the medical school have on local communities in the province that would make you proud? And third, how could the SFU Medical School benefit you? How would you like to be involved? In the breakout rooms, some of you will be in rooms where Joy, Wade, and Roger may join you. And I would like to just emphasize that they're there to listen. You may want to bombard them with questions, but this is your time to give us your feedback and your ideas. So just keep in mind that their presence there is in a listening mode and not in an answering question mode. There will be lots and lots and lots of opportunities over the next year to dive much deeper into all the issues. And I can guarantee you that you'll have a lot of chances to participate. So just to reiterate the questions, and by the way, each room will have a facilitator and a note taker. And so that what you contribute in the breakouts, we won't note your name, but we will capture the content. And this will all be put together into what we heard report so that you will be heard and you will have a chance to influence how we move forward. So just before heading into the rooms, I'll reiterate the three questions. What unique SFU values, assets, or relationships will set our medical school apart from others? What impacts could the medical school have on local communities in the province that would make you proud? And how could the SFU Medical School benefit you? How would you like to be involved? So Phil, are we ready to go? Okay, we'll head to breakout groups and we'll see you back for a closing in 25 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a highly productive time in your breakout groups, and we appreciate you taking the time to give more feedback to the medical school. Just to wrap up, this is the end of this particular session on the SFU Medical School. One thing I do know is over the next couple of years, there will be a lot more opportunities for feedback and input and so on. And one of the opportunities is a survey, which we'll post the link in the chat with a number of questions that go into a lot more detail. So if you would like to continue on and take the survey at some point and answer some of these questions, you can continue to have input. And all of your input at the breakout groups has been captured by the note takers. And we're going to make a report in a not too distant future about what we heard. The medical school page on the SFU site will continue to be updated, including recording today and surveys available to share your additional ideas. If I could, I'd like to now turn it back to Joy and Wade, who are going to close out the session with some of their thoughts on what they heard into the breakout groups.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I will say it was very hard to be quiet, but I really enjoyed my breakout session and really learned a lot. And there are a few things that really strike me. One is the enthusiasm for the medical school and for doing things differently and doing it the SFU way, the community engaged way. I heard a lot of aspirations for a different kind of primary care provider who doesn't treat diseases, I love this line, but treats people. And a real sense of understanding of community as well, which was pretty exciting. I will also say I heard still some language that I think I'm going to pay attention to, and that things seem murky still, that not all the questions got answered. And I'm thinking that we really should pay attention to the questions that didn't get answered and make sure that people that we're trying to answer them as best we can. I know people are really hungry for information about this program. And I guess the other thing I'm taking away today is that we need to continue to work hard to show and share our work, because that it's really important that people understand where we're at with the program, but also kind of the challenges that are lying ahead. I also heard a real desire to be reaching out to our departments, to our faculties, a continued desire, so that because there's a sense that they can really contribute. They want to contribute to this program. And that's, to me, very, very encouraging as well. So I know, Mark, you've mentioned this, and we are going to work hard to make sure that there are continued opportunities to bring people along. This is SFU's medical program. It's for all of us, and we need to make sure we make it the best possible program we can. And so thank you, everyone, very, very much. Really have enjoyed the engagement. I'm going to check in with you, Wade. Just curious about your reflections as well.
Well, I think the first thing that I would comment on is, like you, I found it very hard to bite my tongue. But I will say that the conversation that took place in my group was very exciting. I was really pleased to hear it. There was lots of great discussion. I like to always just picking up on words when I see things. Community, both ways, you know, both the internal community, the external, and the bridge needs to be there. Sustainability, cultural sensitivity, diversity being key elements that we want to be looking at. Being integrated with the existing campus, not disjointed, maybe going on. And an interesting one for me was that, you know, it's the SFU Medical School, but really it's the SFU Surrey Medical School. And they're working with the city and making sure that we are embedding with both the organizations and the various cultural groups and community around Surrey will go a long way to being recognized as an SFU Surrey medical program. Or for me, it's this Fraser Health medical program.
Great, thank you, Wade. Roger, you're still with us. Do you have any quick last comments from the group, what you observed in the group you were in?
Yeah, well, similar to the others, it was hard to just listen and not jump in, but great. We had students and potential students who were really excited and wanting to see aspects of the SFU Medical School reflected in what they're proud about in terms of Simon Fraser University. I would pick up on the point that you made, Mark, earlier about asking questions. Essentially, we know there are lots of questions, and some of the time we've thought of the question and we have an answer. Some of the time we've thought of the question, we don't have an answer yet. And some of the time we haven't even thought of the question. So it's really important that you keep asking these questions. And as time goes by, we'll be doing what we can to actually to provide the sort of answers that everybody's asking for.
Great, thank you. So just to wrap up, great thanks to Joy, to Wade, to Roger, to Elder Marie for being with us today and sharing your thoughts and wisdom and answering the questions as best you can. And I see the medical school is in great hands as we move forward. Also want to thank our Center for Dialogue people, particularly Phil and Julie, who have done a stellar job of making this complex Zoom thing work. And as always, we just greatly appreciate all the work you do behind the scenes to make things happen. And thanks to anyone else that I have forgotten to thank who's been involved. I know there's quite a team doing the medical school work. I won't mention them all, but a lot of people working behind the scenes to bring this forward. Thank thanks to all of you for being with us today, for sharing your thoughts. And hope that you have a good evening and that you stay involved with the medical school. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.